I'm Alice.
And I'm Brett.
And this is the Prosecutor's Legal Briefs. Welcome back to the Prosecutor's Legal Briefs. I'm your host, Alice, and I'm joined as always by my overshadowed co-host, Brett. Because, Brett, who do we have here with us today?
Alice, we're so honored to have Nancy Grace on the show with us, the legend, and I just can't tell you how excited I am for this discussion.
Nancy, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a huge honor. Thank you.
Well, Nancy, the honor is all ours. We are so excited to have you for even a moment, but I know our listeners would absolutely just love to hear more about you. You have been ever present in my life in terms of ever since I could watch TV. I think I've watched you. And kind of jumping into that, this is a crowded field, true crime reporting, and it's become even more crowded in recent times. You have been the voice that has really endured through decades and through some of the most famous cases, some of the most important cases of our generation. We would just love to hear how you got into this, because this is a difficult and exhausting field to be in, and what drives you day in and day out to wake up early and speak to people like us, and then to continue to report on these important cases.
Wow, that's a big question. And I'll try to sum it up quickly because there are so many cases out there that need our attention. I hate to focus on my story when all of these cases are happening now, and crime victims' families really do not have a voice. Under our Constitution, as you guys know, the defendant is protected. The victim is not. How did I get into this business? Well, I was just recently at CrimeCon, and when I mentioned that I majored in English Shakespearean literature to become a university professor, I said, "You're doing it too." Everyone started laughing, and I didn't know how to take that, but I took it in the best light possible. But that was what my plan was. And as I often say, whenever people make plans, somewhere an angel is laughing because they have a completely different plan. I continued in my studies, and just before our wedding, my fiance was murdered. I say random. What happened? Keith had a summer job at a construction site. He was majoring in geology and already had a job lined up in Colorado. He was finishing up, it's his senior year, and on the construction site, a guy had been fired about a week before Keith started his job. The guy returned to the site, saw the company truck that Keith was in, and unloaded. He shot Keith 5 times in the face, the neck, and the head. Well, my world exploded, and I dropped out of school, and it was the worst time in my life. I don't really remember coming out of it, but I did come out of it to an extent, and decided to go to law school. And all of my energy was then focused on getting in and out of law school to become a felony prosecutor. That's what happened.
And then after trying some of the most difficult cases imaginable, you made this transition to where you're not just in a courtroom, but you're speaking for victims on one of the broadest platforms possible. How did you make that? And did you ever imagine yourself being someone who's talking on television to millions of people?
No, I never intended to be on air. This is what happened. I didn't really make a transition. A transition was forced upon me. I had the most awesome district attorney. Lewis Slayton was at that time the longest serving district attorney in the country. I believe it was 37 years elected. He was like a grandfather to me. He gave me the opportunity to be a trial lawyer. Whether I succeeded or not was on me, but he gave me that chance. And I worked nonstop day and night. on my cases because, frankly, I had nothing else in my life. I did not ever expect to marry or have a family. All I did was work and put one bad guy away after the next, after the next. Remind me to tell you about my judge. Well, I'll add it in now. He was the oldest judge in the courthouse, Luther Alverson. In fact, he was so old that he was not part of the mandatory retirement.
Well, that's great.
And yeah, so, it didn't apply to him because it was enacted after, he was already past mandatory retirement. Anyway, he was fit as a fiddle, and it was his intent to prove he was fit to be on the bench by having the lowest jail count in the courthouse of all the other judges, which means you keep your caseload down. You don't have people languishing in jail waiting for trial. And every week the jail count would go out. I remember I would get it every, Tuesday morning and be on pins and needles to find out if we had the lowest jail count. I was assigned to his courtroom. So to keep the jail count down and, to keep our caseload down, I had to go on trial every other week. Every other week I was striking juries. I remember one week it was a 2-week trial calendar. We had 3 felonies. I tried 3 felonies in one trial calendar. One was a murder. I'd start with a murder, then which would take most of my prep time. Then I would go down to an ag assault, a child molestation, or a rape. And then if I still had to try another case, because Judge Alverson would be sitting on the bench waiting for me to show up to try a case, I would do something like a theft or a drug case. Because as the weeks wore on, I would be getting more and more exhausted. That said, after 10 years working for Mr. Sladen, he announced he was retiring. It's the only time I shed a tear in front of anyone in the courthouse. I went to his office. I couldn't believe it was happening. He was retiring, and all of the top litigators would naturally be fired or thrown out because the new DA, whoever that was, I have no stomach for politics. I did not want to run. The new DA would fire all the top litigators to have his own people around him or her. That said, I had turned down a job at Court TV a month or 2 before. I sat on a panel in New York between so-called experts, between Johnny Cochran and Roy Black. And we got in a big fight. He had just won the Simpson case, and Black had just won the William Kennedy Smith rape debacle case. FYI, he did it. Anyway, we got into a big fight. I didn't know any of those people. There had to be, 300 people there. I didn't know them. So I just let it go. I told them they were liars and pointed out everything I thought was wrong with what they said to the jury and blah, blah, blah. And then I made my merry way home. So anyway, I was approached that night to do a he say, she say, Cochran and Grace. I'm like, no, I've got a serial rape case I got to try when I get back. I shouldn't even be here. So next thing you know, Slayton announced he's retiring, and I called Court TV back and went, hey, you know that job? I'll take it. And I moved to New York with a curling iron, 2 Chifferow boxes of clothes, and $300 is all I had because prosecutors didn't make diddly squat at all. I had 2 night jobs at the time teaching, and I took off to New York. I didn't know a soul. That's what happened.
That's an incredible story because who turns down Court TV and then calls back and Court TV basically begs you to come back? But I think so
I don't know that I would go that far.
Well, that's our story. You know what? We're the narrators here. We get to set the story. It's all about storytelling.
The story
right?
wins.
Best story wins. But Nancy, that's so inspiring because for 10 years, those who try cases know it's a completely different world. Like you said, you're on national TV with famous people, and all you can think about is your serial rapist case back at home because that is what you went into the law for. But having tried cases, knowing the ins and outs of evidence and rules and all the intricacies that really are not talked about on TV, how did you make that transition to then explain these very technical concepts that are incredibly important to our judicial system to the world writ large?
I didn't make it very well because I was constantly called on the carpet for fighting with Johnny Cochran because he'd say something that I would just jump in, which is very rude, and say, well, that's not true. That's not what happened. And if looks could kill, he would have totally killed me. But, Johnny was, God rest his soul, very, very unique. I hated everything that he said, but I learned something from Cochran. He had an it factor like I've never seen before. He walked in a room, women want to be with him, men want to be him. He just had it. It. I mean, there was just something about him. And, you know, he and his family, his wife, Dale, just a lovely, lovely person and brilliant in her own right. But Cochran just had a way with people. You know, everybody loved him and juries loved him. Judges loved him. And so just think about it. If you're on a jury and you have one lawyer you can't stand and one lawyer you love, of course, you're going to naturally believe what that lawyer says. And I really think his charm factor had a great role in winning the Simpson case. Wait, where was I? Oh, yes, that. I got called on the carpet all the time for interrupting him, which was very rude on my part, for correcting him, for fighting with him. Yeah, that happened.
and you've mellowed so much since then. So, you know, it's
Yes,
it's hard to even imagine that.
Yes, I've mellowed.
Let me ask you this. Back in 2004, you wrote a book called Objection, How High-Priced Defense Attorneys, Celebrity Defendants, and the 24/7 Media Have Hijacked Our Criminal Justice System. And I got to imagine with the rise of social media, you've seen that problem become even worse. What are your thoughts about the way crime is covered now and with this rise of YouTube and TikTok and all these other people who are commenting on cases?
Okay, number one, I don't give a flying fig about how anything is covered. I don't care. All I care about is what a jury hears. Now, if a jury hears coverage, which they are not supposed to, then it matters to me. But what a bunch of talking heads are saying about a case does not amount to a hill of beans. It doesn't matter. It's just like rolling down your window on 3rd Avenue in New York and yelling out of it. It doesn't matter. All that matters is what the jury hears, what they think. That's all that matters.
Do you think there's a danger of juries being more susceptible to social media? It's easy to turn off your TV or not read your newspaper, but maybe it's harder to not read Facebook.
Well, you have to take your oath very seriously. But we do know that jurors don't always do that. Yeah, I think that honestly, the best way to do it is to sequester jurors, but I never wanted a jury sequestered. Why? They hate it. And the more you put them through pure hell, the less likely they are to reach a verdict of any type. They'll hang because they're miserable.
So changing the question slightly, completely agree. And that was such a good lawyer answer that it's what the jury hears that matters. But changing into kind of what we look into in terms of reporting, have you found the rise of anyone can have a hot take on TikTok, on YouTube, affect those that you interview, whether it be victims or victims' families, in terms of how their perceptions are shaped by what the media is saying? And I'd love to hear how that's changed over the years and what you've seen.
Oh, my goodness. Well, of course, over the years, when social media didn't exist to the extent that it does now, everyone whined and complained that the newspaper or the TV was affecting the jury. Now it's social media. I find it very hard to believe that some jurors are not going to violate their oath, and they are going to look at social media. I mean, they may set out by going, oh, you know what? I'm just going to read Daily Mail. I'm not going to read about my case. And then they go to Daily Mail and there it is on the front banner. And bam, it's done. The bell's been rung. I also believe that a lot of social media opinion on cases is fueled by hatred. I really think that, which has no place in the courtroom or in the evidence. Lady Justice is blind. She holds a sword and a shield, both for good reason. But she is to be blind to the race, the sex, the religion, the education, the economic grade of every victim and defendant. And social media is not like that at all.
So you've been the voice for victims since before you were on the air, since when you were a prosecutor. Do you have any words of wisdom for people like us who are struggling through this to try and be a voice for victims, people who are creating podcasts or YouTube videos or whatever, to do that in a way that is respectful?
Yes, I do. One word: persevere. Because the moment you let them drag you down, the world is losing a voice for everything that is good and right. If you let them drag you down, don't listen to quote them. If you listen to quote them, no dream will ever come true. No task will ever be completed. You might as well just go hide under your bed, because people are going to hate you for taking a stand, for saying what you believe. They're going to hate you. Why? I don't know why. I'm not a shrink. I don't know why there was so much hate and vitriol, but it's a reality, and you must persevere. And as I always say, in the words of my beloved William Shakespeare, to thine own self be true. Don't change to make other people like you. You're not going to walk away crowned Miss Sweet Potato. That's not going to happen. People are going to disagree with you. Accept it. Accept it. You'll be known by your enemies. Remember that.
Well, Nancy, I think there are no greater words to end on with that. We know your time is precious. We do not want to keep you from getting to speaking for the victims as you've done for so long. But before we end, do you have any parting words before we sign off?
Yes, I want to thank you for having me on today. You could have had so many characters on today, so many people close to trials that could give you the ins and outs. So I feel very honored to be on with you. And I think you should be so proud of what you're doing. Moving right into, in about 8 minutes, the discussion of the Madeline Soto case. And it's very disturbing, about a 13-year-old little girl that was murdered by mommy's boyfriend, according to me and according to police. And I'm very distraught, not only about that case, but I want to put awareness out there. So maybe one child can be saved.
Amen to that, Nancy. And really quickly, just as a fellow woman prosecutor who came many years after you, I just want to thank you. You've set an example for women in the courtroom, women on TV, not being apologetic for our voices. And I hope you continue to do this for a very long time, because people mistake passion for emotion. And absolutely, those are two different things. And you embody that passion for a lot of people who don't have voices. So we want to thank you for what you do, for giving us the opportunity to speak with you. Well, this has been one of the most riveting conversations, I think, of me and Brett's career. Thank you, Nancy, for being here. We will not keep her any longer. But until next time, I'm Alice.
And I'm Brett.
And I'm Nancy Grace. Goodbye, friend.
This is the Prosecutor's Legal Briefs. I always tell myself I'm not going to get fiery, and then I get fiery. It is. I wish I were Italian, but it's the Italiano in me. Oh, my goodness. All right. This has been fun, y'all.
All right. We love you. You guys are awesome, and we will talk to you soon.
Always. Can't wait.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Don't forget to stop
Don't forget
recording.
to stop. Yeah, don't forget to stop recording.